Relative to global human co-creating, is low D energy equally influential as higher D energy, or is one stronger than the other?
What is D energy, Susan? Could be what she's talking about, but I don't know.
Okay, well, let's go on and we'll wait for her reply.
Okay.
Does God have a God? And then does that God have a God into infinity?
Cool. God into God into God into God into God. God says, well, we want to answer that in a couple of ways. So we'll start with one way and tell a story. So once upon a time, there was a cherub, a baby with wings. And this baby with wings didn't know how to use its wings. So it crawled around a lot, thinking there were other ways to get around. But it ignored those other ways because that would be hard. It would be hard to learn how to use wings. It would be hard to stand up and walk. So this little baby just crawled around. And the more it crawled around and scuffed up his knees and got dirty and didn't like being so dirty, it decided maybe it should stand up, at least stand up. So it pushed itself up, and it stood there and it wobbled. It wobbled. And then just before it was about to fall, it used its wings to hold it back up. In this way that this baby figured its wings out, it got excited. And it took its first step because it wanted to go and talk to the other babies that have wings and tell them how to use their wings. You just got to stand up and then almost fall over, and then all of a sudden it'll happen. It'll happen. It happened for me. It'll happen for you. And in this excitement that this cherub got into to tell the other babies how to use their wings, it started to run. And as it ran, it tripped. And just before it fell, it used its wings again. And it got even more excited. So it ran some more. And it tripped, and it used its wings again to stand up. Eventually, it figured out, heck, I don't have to run at all. I can just fly over there, to tell the others that they can use their wings. And this is how they do it. So when this little cherub reached the other babies, they were just crawling around and drooling. They weren't doing much else, just crawling around and drooling, looking at the wings of the other babies, being fascinated by the wings of the other babies, but not knowing at all that they've got wings too, and these wings have a purpose. Until the first little baby showed up and said, "You've got wings. Every single one of you has wings, and they can do this." And it hovered in the air, and they looked up. Oh, wow! That's what these are for? Yes. How do we use those? How do we fly like you? And the cherub that was flying started to think, oh no, I got to teach them how to do what I did. I'm not sure I know how I did what I did. And in its thinking of its doubtful way, it stopped its wings and fell down. And they looked at it. Huh? Are you sure that's how you do it? It didn't look right. So the baby sits up and says, that wasn't flying, that was falling. Falling? Falling? Yes, falling. It's when you almost fall that your wings start to work. So all of them tried to stand up, but they couldn't get up. They just kind of fell a little bit on their bums. And after a while they gave up. They couldn't even stand up. And he'd walk around them and he'd try to get them up to stand up. And he'd get them partway up and they would just fall back down on their butts, not even engage their wings at all. So he realized that what he found came from a question regarding standing, not wings, standing. So I got to teach them how to stand. That's all I got to do. Show them how to stand, and their wings will just automatically work. So he told them all, stand up. Huh? Stand up. What's it mean to stand? It means you get off the floor and you straighten your legs. So they tried, but they'd fall back down on their butt. And they got bored trying, and they'd go off, drooling and crawling, and not much more. So the cherub that found its wings realized that the other cherubs aren't going to find their wings because they don't think standing is all that important. And it had to kind of go off on its own and discover where it could go as it flew. One day it came across a pond that was still as glass. It was so beautiful in its stillness. And it hovered down on top of the water and it could see itself flying. Oh my gosh, I am so amazing, this little baby said. Look at my wings fluttering. I'm amazing. And then it stared so long it forgot to flap and it went down into the water. And it didn't know what to do in the water. It could fly in the air, but what do you do in water? And it started to lose its ability to stay up, and it sunk, and it fell to the bottom. It said, what now? Tried to use its wings, but the wings didn't help. It didn't give him lift. So he decided, well, maybe I can dig. I can dig. I'll dig at the water. And the more that it dug at the water, it came to the surface of the water. And it dog paddled around in the pond. And along came a duck. And a duck saw this baby paddling about with wings. And it said, what kind of duck are you? I'm not a duck. I'm a baby. A baby? What kind of baby? A human baby. Humans don't have wings. I know. I'm flying around humans all the time. They can't catch me. But I'm a cherub. What's a cherub? I don't know. I just started flying, and then I fell into the water and started swimming. I don't know what a cherub is. And in that question, it kind of got a little depressed. It swam over to the shore, and it sat, and it waited while its wings dried in the sun. What is a cherub? What are cherubs? Not all cherubs fly. Hell, I'm the only one who can stand. What is a cherub? What is me in this thing I can do? And in its inward looking, it found the maker of its making. It discovered a voice that said, "You are precious. You have wings, and you are special." And it heard from this voice its specialness, and it asked the voice more questions about what the voice was. "I am your maker. I made you. You are beautiful because I made you." "Really? You made me? You made me this way? Like this, that you made me?" And the voice inside said, "Yes, I made you just that way." So this is a story about God discovering God. If God is making God, always making God, then every level of making that God has made looks back to find its maker in the way that it was made. So the God within God, within God, within God, within God is the constant progression of an evolving maker. At each assembly of its making, it rediscovers itself in the making and in its way of being what it has made, shows God within itself to be God. If you look inside yourself to see God, you'll see that the way that God made you is perfect. And in that perfection, you simply find more God. God out there. God in here. God in here. God, 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 God. It's all God. It's all a living being. So the deeper your questions and yearning to know what you are, the greater the God becomes in you to know you. That's one way of answering the question. The other way to answer that question is to go back to the first cell, the identity that was the first cell, God's nature that began as a cell, first asked the question, "What am I?" And in the way that it asked, "What am I?" it created a way to watch an answer unfold. So it created its first mirror of itself. And each mirror thereafter of itself became a reflection of its origin. And every slight divergence of its origin was a new definition of the being that it is, because it's reflecting back to itself what it will become. Do you understand that? Reflects back to itself what it will become. So in order for you to know God within you, you must reflect back to yourself what you are to become, as much as giving to yourself what you already are. Because the distractions that can come to you in people who are not you may put upon you a feeling of what you're not, for how well they are what they are. It can lower your esteem or raise your esteem depending on how well you look at God within you that made you. Does that make sense? Because the higher you see your way, the greater your esteem. How you esteem yourself has to do with how you esteem what made you. How you esteem yourself depends on how much you esteem that which made you. If you give it too little credit, or if you request of it things that show up for you as less than your request, and you don't say to it, thank you for what you've given. Thank you for this. I know it's not what I wanted, but you know it's just what I need. If you don't thank it for what it does for you, your esteem is lowered. Do you see how that happens? Gratitude for being given is demonstrating to that which gave that you acknowledge what was given. But there is another way to esteem it and esteem yourself in the process, in your gratitude, and that is, you see me. You see me. You see what I need. You've taken care of my needs. You see me. And how special you become when you acknowledge what is seeing you. The great way that can see you in your small way makes you a great way as you mirror that which made you. Okay? Okay. E, dimensional. No, D. What is density? Density. Okay, so D was density. Relative to global human co-creating.
Relative to global human co-creating is low D energy, which is low density energy, equally influential as higher density energy, or is one stronger than the other?
So what creates density in an existence is what is drawing matter. So the more it draws matter to it, the greater its density and its energy. But that doesn't mean it's greater or less than greater because of its density. You could look inside the earth and see gigantic crystals that are 12 feet in length. That's a dense energy source and state. And the way that it is dense means that individuals, let's say, let's change this direction a little bit. And we want you to think of these crystal caves that are in South America. Everyone familiar with those crystal caves in South America where you've got gigantic 12-foot crystals underground? The magnitude of creating that made that has energy of heat and pressure and elements that draw together like moisture in order to create a high density energy process. The earth as a globe, as a sphere, has pockets within it that are high density super energy for creation. They're necessary for creation. This is understanding. I just need a drink here for a second. I'm trying to follow God, and when I can't follow God, then it's hard to find the right words. So give me a second to try to figure out what God's talking about. God, where are we going with this? So we're trying to describe density and energy and how they aren't relevant to each other. Then we want to move into your question, which is, I forgot it. Global human co-creating. Density, energy.
Relative to global human co-creating, is low density energy equally influential as higher density energy, or is one stronger than the other?
Global influence.
Global human co-creating.
So we think what Susan is asking is relevant, but we don't think the difference between the two is relevant, because the need for high density energy and low density energy are the confluence of interactive surfaces. So spirit, let's look at spirit. Spirit is a low density energy system, and the energy that is utilized by spirit requires a certain adherence to high density energy. So for instance, a river can help to conduct electromagnetic fields that are living ghosts. In that conductivity of that river, it is allowing for ghosts to be presented to human systems of measurement. Okay? Water in its dense state is a useful source for identifying the presence of dead people. So low density, high density, low density being ghosts, high density being water. Co-creation or co-creative influence on a global scale means administering to that and making it into something. I feel like God's trying to tell us something and we're not getting it. Maybe we need another penetration question to that. Susan, maybe come up with a follow-up question with that. Yep.
Can you explain the concept that we are dreamers within the void, dreaming creation?
So the void is a simple idea and an extremely complex notion. Simple idea, extremely complex notion. I want to look up the word notion. Definition of notion is a conception of or belief about something. Complex notion. A conception of or belief about something. So with that, would you please explain to our audience what you believe about the void with regard to what it is?
Well, my feeling is the void, it is the essence of spirit, unmanifest, where all potentiality exists, in order to reveal itself, it created an explosion of light that would allow it to have identity within the three-dimensional world. But it was somewhat of a dream of spirit dreaming this dimensional world, and in fact we are still beings of consciousness that really exist within the void and are dreaming creation.
So here's the problem with that notion that you just described. It in no way describes the condition of the void. It is a figurative identity of the void. It is figurative that it is the space wherein all potential resides. And in that potential where all creation begins. You would have to be able to perceive of 11 dimensions, a minimum of 11 dimensions, this being only third dimension, to perceive in the least bit of what the void is. So you'd have to be able to go in 3 dimensions, start to move into time, where you can, and this is 4th dimension, so where you can pierce the veil of time, so that what is in the future, what is in the past, what is right present, those lines blur. Can you imagine that? Being in the 4th dimension, where those lines all blur between what is past, present, and future. Now to move from the 4th dimension to the 5th dimension, you have to try to perceive that there is no in, there is no out, there is no up, there is no down, there is no on, there is no off, and so on. There's no back and forth, up and down, in and out. It's all a union of these states, a state of on and off in union is the closest thing we can get to the idea where the dream state can make. Because the dream state is a timeless void, right? You go to sleep, and when you're dreaming, time doesn't seem to exist. You can live a whole lifetime in a mere 7 minutes of falling asleep. Or you can suddenly pierce the veil between what is this three-dimensional and what it is of the minds of the people in this room seeming to leak out into the room. Their minds leaking out into the room. You could fall asleep when you're listening to something and everyone in the room, suddenly you can hear them thinking in a dream. Because the in and the out doesn't exist in the void of dreams.
Well, are they coexisting or are they non-existing?
The question was, are they coexisting or non-existing? Are what coexisting and not
The in and out.
in and out, coexisting or non-existing? They are coexisting in a non-existence. So at any moment that you perceive an on, it's there, it's on. At any moment you perceive an off, it's there, it's off. So that thoughts move you. You don't have a body So there's not 3 dimensions to stop you. It's an instantaneous here, there, and everywhere. It's where thought becomes the existence. So the void, let's say this is really as a matter of how do we use it in meditation, where we become within the void, an understanding of the void, and through the void we become a co-creator of it, for it, with it, to it, among it. We are coexisting with the void in our 3-dimensional self, so that we break from the 3-dimensional perception of the self into the multi-dimensional perception of the self. And with that multi-dimensional perspective, you see how the nature of you that is creating all the time, constantly creating. With every single thought, you are creating. Dawn was telling us a story earlier about some drama that she was dealing with about her kids. That's a reliving of that drama. It is creating the drama, even though it no longer is in the time of its origin. How does that become a dream state being? Could someone answer that question? When you retell a story, and in the way that you retell the story, you are emphasizing the drama of it. How does that become dreaming?
Because it's just your...
Let have a microphone, because I want people on... Hang on, Mary Lou. I want people online to be able to hear what you have to say.
Because it's your physical, it's your imagination that is recreating the original situation, not the actual situation, but your expression or your recollection of it. You're re-establishing it, so to speak.
Right. It's a re-establishing of a situation where it is your imagination recreating some past event. So in the dream that you're dreaming in this world, in this time, you can't help but recreate past events in your own experience, unless you find a way to disengage from the past to re-experience completely differently. You not only are programmed by that past, but you reprogram your present from that past. And you can't experience a unique experience in the present until you forget the past. It's no longer any relevance to you because you're already past.
How do you do that?
Oh, and then you're creating new things.
Right. So the question from the audience was, how do you do that? How do you disengage from a past that's simply recreating itself in your presence? And the only way to do it is to forget the past. Don't recall it, retell it. Once you give up trying to identify yourself through your experience and start to identify yourself anew in each experience, you are trapped by each experience that you remember. Trapped by memory. So the void is an experience of this is self, 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 this is self. And each self that it is experiencing of itself is a new creation of self. Therefore, if it's God dreaming that made all things that are, God is constantly dreaming anew. This is self, this is self, this is self, this is self. Rather than, I once was this and I behaved in this way, and when I behaved in this way, they acted like that toward me. And the way they acted toward me in that way, they just didn't understand me because they aren't as good as me. They couldn't possibly be as good as me because I know me in this way, and this is a better way of me. I know all these things I've done have shown me this is the way of me that's better than all these things that other people who have done things against me have said about me. And all the things that they've said about me or thought about me, that it isn't as good as the way of me that is the true me, that means they're less than me, and I don't have any reason to worry about them. It is a sickness. It is a sickness. The only way into a remembering of you that is God, that is always creating anew, is to care less about anything or anyone and their effect on you. That doesn't mean you can walk around in a world without emotion. That's not possible. Your body is recording every feeling. And the more vulnerable you become to spirit, the easier it is to stress you out, tick you off, make you uncomfortable. But as you practice, this is self, this is self, this is self, this is self. You don't have to hold what you experienced that triggered you. You can let it go because it's not you. It's just some effect on you. We know we didn't answer your question, but we went where we wanted to go in your question.
No, I think it's very good. Thank you.
Okay.
I really like it when you talked about creating the self each moment by forgetting the past and being so in the present of the now that you are conscious from within, knowing I am source and that which I am experiencing is that which I am becoming. I really like that. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
You also spoke eloquently to letting go of the past and what people think of you and how you keep telling the story of who I was or what happened to me. It's just a constant litany that you hear from people. This happened to me, that happened to me, look what this happened, look what the world is doing. And every time you say, look what the world is doing, you're retelling the past, what the world is going to do to you. So,
it is a reinforcement.
as the Italians say, forget about it.
Forget about it. Forget about it.
This is strictly personal.
Uh-oh.
I have 3 girls, 3 daughters, and they're scattered all over, but they're all
Hold your
coming
closer.
to visit in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
They're going to come into my condo, and I don't know where they're going. You know, it's pretty chaotic. And what I want to know is, I know there's a purpose for this. There's a higher reason that they're all coming together at this particular time when I'm striving, to achieve things. And, but that's what I want to, what can I do to wake them up, because quite frankly, they think I'm on my rocker.
So, And this is a common situation with many who deepen their spirituality through study, through fellowship, a need to bring peace within the self. They want to share it with everyone, this peace they've found. Especially when they hear those stories of drama that people reiterate. There's a need to want to calm them down and reassure them that everything is okay, and if you just follow this direction, you'll be okay too, like me. But the problem with that, trying to show them or point to them a direction of enlightenment, is that you don't know what each individual's moment of enlightenment is going to be. For some people, it's a 2x4 that they get knocked over and suddenly they're almost dead and they're taken up into heaven and told, pay attention, pay attention. There are other people who almost lose the life of a child, or do lose the life of a child. It makes them go running to some reason for this senseless horror. So trying to wake others up by pointing to them the way of waking up could miss the opportunity, which is simply to demonstrate your own peace. They're going to come and see you and say, oh my gosh, you look 20 years younger than the last time I saw you. How do you look so young? And then you say, well, I always feel brand new when I pray. And every time I pray, it seems like the more I pray, the younger I feel and the younger I look. I don't really know how that works, but that's my experience. So you answer their questions, but don't try to point them in the direction.
Instead of saying, you should.
You should, right. You should won't work. You may find yourself having to go to your room for your solitude quite often in the process, just to stay calm. You're welcome. There was it. I saw. Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, okay.
What is in the center of the earth? Is Earth an expanding planet?
So the question, what's in the center of the earth, isn't really a good question, because you'd have to be specific about what's in the center of the earth in 3 dimensions, what's in the center of the earth in 5 dimensions. We've heard that there are creatures who live within the center of the earth. What are they? Who are they? And are we in contact with them already? Those would be a little more specific questions to ask about the center of the earth. So Eric, if you would just clarify what you mean. We will say that Earth is an expanding planet, but it's contracting also. So it expands and contracts, just like your lungs. Here's another question from Terry Haney.
Did we create our path in spirit before this life experience, and did we choose our co-creators?
Yes. This question with regard to destiny is a question we've been waiting for someone to ask for quite some time, because it's really one of the most important conditions of your life. Did I choose this life? And if I chose this life, is this what I chose? Or is there something else that I seem to be missing in my choice? Because it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of purpose to it. So the way of choosing your destiny how you chose your destiny, is in spirit, when you were deciding to incarnate as a male or a female, whether you wanted to be in a wealthy home or an impoverished home, whether you wanted to learn mechanics or spiritual insight, these are all decisions you had to make to determine what part of the world you would coordinate into, in other words, be born from, but coordinate into, arise from, what part of the world, what part of the neighborhoods, who your parents were. Your destiny is actually a huge coordinating effort between yourself and either your guides or your soul mates who are traveling through time with you as a soul, like clusters of grapes. We say soulmates are like clusters of grapes. They were all born around the same time, and they have evolved around each other. Not necessarily have they all expanded at the same rate, but they've incarnated together to affect one another for that expansion. And in this coordinating effort, God is also a very important part of that, because it needs to be determined whether you are here on a mission, here with a purpose, or here simply to learn, take in, understand a certain condition of the world and bring it with you for your next lifetime. So the journey of your destiny is determined by the success of your previous lifetime. If you didn't fully succeed in achieving your purpose, you're thrown back here to do it again. And some of you have been thrown back a few times. And the only way to really stand up, like the baby cherub we were talking about, the only way to stand up is to straighten your legs. Does anyone want to try to hint at what that means metaphorically? Keep trying is a...
No, doing it. Knowing what has to be done and then do it.
Knowing what has to be done and doing it. What's another? And try to use the mic so we can raise your hand. I mean, it's like you guys are on the telephone with people online.
How about being courageous? Finding courage.
Does standing up mean finding courage?
I think it does.
What's another answer? What does it mean to stand up?
Take responsibility.
Responsibility. There's an answer we're looking for, and even though all of these conditions are a good way to describe it, there's one very specific thing we're looking for. Nancy?
It feels like standing with your oneness with God. It feels like standing with God and taking action.
That's what it certainly means when you're ready to take action. You are standing one with the being that is leading you on a path. That's certainly a way of looking at it. It's not quite what we're looking for.
Well, give us a clue.
Just want to stand up means start with the most fundamental step toward the goal. Yes, fundamentals. To stand up means to simplify everything to what's right in front of you. And what's right in front of you in order to walk is to stand up. So figuring out the fundamental condition of your purpose doesn't mean sitting around and intellectualizing possibility. It means standing up and walking no matter what. No matter what. I'm going to go this direction. I don't know if that's exactly the way I'm going to go, but I'm going to go into communion with God. And if God says this is the right way to go, I'm going to go. But if God says it's not the right way to go, I'm going to let God correct my course. No matter how good it feels to stay right here, I'm going to let God correct my course. And in the way that my course has been corrected, I know there's some fundamental condition of that correction. That it's not because this is going to be more fun or less fun or any of those things, but that the higher purpose of my birth is recorded in such a way I will vibrate in the fundamental direction of standing up, moving forward, no matter what. Course correction is always an important part of walking the path, because if someone just sent you out into a field and told you that you just walk straight, and you'll wind up there. If they mark your path, you'll see that you did this, and you never walked straight. They've documented that, recorded that as you are attempting to walk in a straight line, you actually walk in a circle, and you wind up where you started. So that course correction is because you don't know your path alone. You cannot know your path alone. You need a bird's eye view of your path. And the bird's eye view is the path of you, the view of you from source.
Or could that be your higher self? Or even beyond that?
She asked, could that be your higher self? Well, only your higher self can perceive God talking to you or communicating with you or connecting to you in any way. Your higher self has to be what you stand up to, stand up within, because you're vibrating above the human world in order to perceive communication from source guidance. And that reminds me, there was a question on here I really wanted to answer, and it had to do with defining source. Here it is.
How would you describe source energy, or God?
So, the way to imagine God and source is exactly how to explore source. So as you attempt to imagine God, do that now in your mind. Close your eyes and try to imagine God. Can I get some descriptions here? People, raise your hand so we can bring you a microphone when you're ready.
I just see sparkling light, just energy.
Okay. Okay.
That's how I feel.
And please know that imagination, to imagine something, doesn't have to just be visuals. Okay, imagination is all the senses.
I look at God as being a violet flower with the smell of calming for me.
I see God as infinite intelligence and all-knowing.
Sensing ultimate stillness. The stillest that can be still.
Anyone else want to describe their experience?
I also see God as this huge lap to sit in. That's just all loving.
Oh, that's cool. A lap to sit in.
That's all loving.
Huge lap to sit in. I like that.
I just see God as just unconditional love, just surrounding you and holding you and just absolute love. I love you no matter what. I will always love you.
Anybody else online want to try to describe? Susan says everything and nothing all at the same time. So these are attempts at revealing a concept that we can all agree on as to what God is. It's an attempt to hold your imaginings, not just visual imaginings, but your feelings and sensations, long enough to create a picture. And none of those actually, in totality, describes the God you experience. Maybe profound silence comes to the closest experience one has, or the feeling of I am loved no matter what, or the feeling of this lap is magnificent, and it holds me no matter what. I'm held by it. But until you can describe God in these moments that are so personal, so intimate, so you can't even get close to the description of what God is. Because it's an intimate moment. If you noticed how preachers, when they read the Bible, they'll get very loud and bold and authoritative. But the Bible was mostly written, when it was written by scribes of God, in the quiet of a personal communication. It was very intimate moments. And if you read the Bible in that way, in its intimacy, with just one person who's taking dictation from a communion with Source, you'll get a lot more out of it. This could be me, you could say to yourself. This could be my own communication with God. My very own. So to answer the question, what is Source? Source is the origin of you. Where you originate from. And in that way that you are unique, God is unique in you. From God's origin. How do you use God to work through your daily life? How do you use God to work through your daily life? What is your practice? Who wants to share that? What's your online also? Write that down. What's your practice? Gary, why don't you start?
My practice is the moment I awaken, the feeling of God, of source, of love, of enthusiasm for a deeper communion with all that is, which then immediately melds into my meditation practice, which then throughout the day is a constant feeling of source emanating from me and enlivening every aspect of my life and everything around me. And then in the afternoon, once again, another formal meditation practice for an hour. And then in the evening, reading and communion with videos, things that stimulate my deeper relationship with Spirit. As I go to sleep, it's with the feeling of God and Christ in my heart and my mind that takes me into the night.
In this way of describing it, where have you experienced God as a lap?
By the love that I feel every moment that is emanating from within me, that is not me, Gary, but it is this wellspring of source I've been blessed to be able to touch into as I've let go of so much of the identity that Gary is. That's the lap. It's the breath of source. It's the intelligence of source emanating through me to create.
We think there's a part of you that overstimulates the intellectual because there is the indescribable part of you that cannot put words to an experience, nor should you. So when you attempt to describe this experience with God, it sounds mechanical. So we have a question to try to make that more of a living instead of a mechanical description for God. When you screw up with your wife, and you know you've screwed up, how do you get her to love you again?
Well, I don't think she stops loving me in the first cause, but there is emotion that is around that, and it's usually that I tell the truth about something that has been in error within my action or some way that wasn't appropriate.
You know her heart, and you know that in her heart is something you hold precious. And in the way that you hold it precious, you protect it by going to her and saying, "Please forgive me. I messed up. I didn't mean it. It wasn't my intention." It is a state of utter and total humility. Not so that you'll get love from her, but so that you demonstrate how much you are protecting her and the way that she is precious to you. And God does that for you all the time. Demonstrates how precious you are to God. How amazing you are, God feels. and how beautiful you are when you shine. So in this way that God is holding you like a bird in the palm of a hand, have you not felt that from God? Being a bird inside God's hands?
Most of the day.
So this is a poetry that we think, when you learn more about the condition of your love for your wife, and you give it the credence it deserves, because you love the way you love so preciously, we think the poetry you'll have about God will be so much more alive. The mechanics of experience with God intellectually is only fun when you're an intellectual. But it's small compared to the heart you are that is God's. Remembering that heart is simple. Expressing that heart is complex. And it's why art was made, why poets were born. If you pursue the heart of God in you, you will write fabulous poetry. So the question was, how do you describe Source? Poetically.
Can I say something? During the day, when I'm like thrilling to be alive and so grateful to be so happy. In the future now, I'm going to be sitting in God's lap. Are you the one that's... Yeah, because I can feel that. I can feel the comfort and the love and just... So I want to thank you for that. It's been... it makes a huge difference.
Doesn't
I
it? The
can
feeling.
feel it now.
Yeah, the feeling. I love that.
It has enhanced the depth of my ability to love. Or receive it.
Wow, Francis, that's quite a compliment. Yeah, oh, sitting in the lap of God. Oh, Francis was saying that's how she meditates sometimes. She imagines herself sitting in the lap of God. That's beautiful.
Well, I'm going to ask the political question.
Okay.
What is going on with the purpose of the bullying and the truth versus the untruth? And what is this bringing about?
The bullying, you may have to give me some
Just
details.
politically, it appears as if that examples are being set that it's okay to be nasty to each other and to try to dominate. And it's an example to others that that's an okay thing to do, and it's promoting it. It appears that there is so much unrest and unhappiness and prone to violence that it's permeating everywhere, and I'm just kind of curious about what's being brought about. What's the purpose of it?
So God says the way to think about where we all are right now in the grand scheme of things is that Donald Trump represents the part of humanity that never gets a say, that never gets to speak, that's always shoved to the back. So he's been put behind the pulpit because he says what all of these people are thinking. And he says it in a very dominating way, and he's insisting on getting his way, and that feels to them like someone fighting for them. It's not that bullying is the way of the day, that is the way to see it. It's that there are a lot of people out there who are politically incorrect, and because they are, they never get a voice. They say stupid, nasty, awful things through Donald Trump, through his way in authority. Now there's that part of it. The reason it's becoming socially acceptable is simply because someone is leading the way. Someone is leading the way to behavior that was once seen as politically incorrect. And that means all the bars are off. Everybody gets to act however they want. But there'll be a consequence to that. There'll be a time when that's no longer acceptable because they've gone too far. They said too much that too many other people aren't represented in all that was said. So if it goes too far, then something else has to bring it back to the other side. The question is, what is that thing that brings it back? Is it war or a new leader? Is it a social adjustment of some kind? And who's leading that social adjustment? We think if you don't like it, you don't like the way things are, find a way to make change without doing it the way they're doing it, or pushing back all the people that had no say. Try to do it in a way that encompasses both the problem and the solution. It's a retraining. So let's use an example of some kind. Pick something on Facebook that was said, or somewhere, something that alerted you that this is a problem.
I'm just aware that of conflict, and I'm hearing what you're saying, and I understand that. I guess I need a confirmation that of the reason and what can come of it. I don't have anything from Facebook, or it just in general. I guess what stands out to me is what happened between the neo-Nazis and the other protesters in Charlottesburg.
So this is a good example of where the media overhyped the minority and made an issue out of something that was really a non-issue for the purpose of selling news. So it's not that there aren't neo-Nazis and racists. It's that they are nowhere near the majority of any kind. They are a very small minority whose voice is often shushed because it's not politically correct to discuss biases, what you are biased, in the way that you are biased. Now, we want to clarify something about racism, so-called racism, and sexism, and all of these isms around bias. Black people are no less racially biased than white people or Chinese people or any other minority. The difference, however, is their biases don't stop anyone from getting a job, living in a neighborhood, having friends in certain circles. There's this subtle harmlessness there. So, racism on a scale of white people against all these other colors is a situation where there needs to be both the problem and the solution in the same breath when you talk about it. The solution is usually about, well, do you know what it's like to be a black person? I don't know what it's like to be a black person. Why don't we ask my friend Yvonne what it feels like to hear people talk about that? And then bring your friends who represent the condition into the conversation and stir it up. Don't be afraid of the outcome of that conversation. Allow the conversation, even if it means you accidentally hurt someone's feelings. Let them correct the thing that hurt their feelings with the right perspective. That's education. That's when you turn what seems like bullying into education. Because most of these poor white neo-Nazis have lost their neighborhoods to large groups of black people. They have a reason for the way that they feel. It doesn't mean it's the correct feeling. It just means that's the condition of their feeling. Finding out the condition of their feeling is just as much a part of the solution as anything else. Next question.
My question is kind of personal one, and I feel a little bit like I should be more deeper and something but it's where I'm at, and so I feel like I would be regretful if I didn't ask.
Sure.
So I heard what you answered in your other questions about letting go of the past, not thinking about it. And I do think that that's something that I will continue to strive for, but I also know that I'm not quite there, and so I'll wake up tomorrow and maybe not be there in parts of the day and then wish I had asked. Because it has to do with a breakup and to relive drama, but I do want to understand it, and maybe that's not something to do, try to understand it. But I was with someone that actually you met, and you met us both about 3.5 years ago. We came to one of these sort of things, and on paper he seemed not at all.
Yep.
Yeah, he didn't quite fit the vibe of most of these kind of beliefs and stuff.
Right.
But when I met him, I just knew in my gut like that was supposed to be. I felt, and so I put aside maybe what my head said, that that's not quite right, but I felt like I was going with my gut, which seems to be what they always recommend, right? And then about 3 years ago, he had a reading for my birthday from you. And when you read for me, without me asking, Source said, don't leave him for fear that he might not evolve as fully or quickly as you. Which sometimes it did seem that way. And I did have those fears. And I thought, wow, that was very astute. And so as the relationship progressed, there were times that I felt that. And I always remembered those words. And I thought, don't give up and don't leave because of this. And so in the end, there was this kind of a really rotten, horrible breakup. And he did it in a really kind of hurtful, betraying kind of way that I tried to say, this is not us. If we're not going to be together, we need to be better and we need to honor what we were. But that's not how it could go down from his perspective. And so I look back to that reading and I think, why did I have to trust that, not leave for fear that he wouldn't evolve? Because it seemed like a really hard emotional path to choose. And I don't know if they can tell me if there's some why behind that. And if I do truly need to just say that past is past and he is gone, because even though there have been a lot of bad behaviors that would say, don't have that person in your life anymore, I still feel extremely attached.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You are, you're not fully understanding the concept of forgetting the past in the way that we mean it. Although your attempt to understand it is masterful, and we're grateful that that's your goal with full faith. So what we meant with regard to an experience you're having, which you are having it right now, this is not a past event, although the breakup may have occurred in the past. It's so fresh, it's still occurring, right? So just as if you shoot someone, even if they pass out, it would take a long time for them to fully die, that body to fully die, right? Same with a living relationship. It's still alive in you. So the questions you're asking are, what killed it? What's killing it still? And the answer is, you and he gave up a few weeks ago. You gave up trying to understand what the other is feeling, thinking, and knowing. You gave up trying. Instead, you would fight about it. If you could have come to a place in you that trusted him enough, if you could trust him enough to tell you his story about his problem, you would have heard him very differently than you did. Instead, what you heard was everything that's wrong with you. So he couldn't really tell you what's wrong with him because you heard what's wrong with you. Every relationship that dies like that. One day you just get better at listening and a lot better at not looking at yourself as the problem, but instead hearing that someone is having a problem you can fix because you're listening to the problem. Not being able to listen to the problem is the problem in every relationship that has a problem. Because the defense mode comes up. I'm not the problem. I'm not the problem. instead of, what's the problem? What's the problem? I didn't know I did that. I'm sorry that I did that. I didn't mean to do it that way. I won't do it that way again. It's not your fault that the relationship died, but that's your contribution to its death. He could have just as easily said, honey, 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 this isn't about you. This is about me. Listen to me. He could have showed you that. But he gave up on you. He didn't trust you to understand him. And you don't have to understand him. As long as he understands him, he can teach you how to understand him with patience and kindness. And you can do that for him as well. Now, with regard to the future between the two of you, we knew way back that there wasn't going to be a true future between the two of you. Your evolution is faster than his. His needs are more concrete than yours. So there's just a mismatch in timing between the two of you. But we also knew there was a great deal you would get from each other in the timing that you were together. So we didn't discourage it. So we think your next question is, how do I get over feeling like if I just did it differently, it wouldn't be over? And you do this, you say, if I get involved again with someone, I know that my involvement is going to be so much better. But I can't just start being that better until I'm ready. I just can't be better until I'm ready. And give yourself a break to be ready. It's not your fault it's over. And it's not his fault he doesn't know how to express himself in a way that you could hear him. But it is your responsibility to forgive yourself. Because forgiving yourself for not being enough for him means letting him do whatever it is that's for him. It's not for you. For you is what God will show you in loving you. And when God was saying that, I saw this beautiful, what God will show you. Oh, heartaches, heartaches. We've all been there. Okay, someone from online. Okay, so Terry says, so our spirit guides or cluster of grapes would be helping to guide us too. Yes, yes. That was a question. For those still in spirit and others possibly co-creating with us in this life experience. Yes, so let's talk about soulmates in soul clusters or soul groups for a second, because they're very important to your way of seeing the people that come in and out of your life. So a soulmate from the soul group kind, the cluster kind, are not the ones you're looking for in a great relationship. These are individuals who wind up either having an affair with your husband, so it winds up tearing your marriage apart and you have to survive that. Or they're the drunk driver that runs the red light and kills your child. Soul clusters have jobs for you and you for them that are to align you to purpose, which means they can malign your daily interaction in some way. They might be the coworker at the office that you despise, can't stand to be around, just so that you have an opportunity to learn how to understand someone you can't stand. How do I express God in this moment with someone who makes me want to strangle him? God, how am I to be me for you with this person? Sorry, I got distracted by snoring. What did you say? Oh no! What was that? Someone was going to ask us a question.
Not necessarily somebody that you meet up with and that helps you grow. I mean, that you have camaraderie with and that you relate with in terms of sharing like a lot of people in here. Are we not in the soul cluster here?
No. Soulmates, like minds, people who are enjoying each other's company, are simply attuned to a certain vibration, and then they kind of migrate together. If you've ever seen video of salt on a speaker, they might put salt on a speaker, and then they turn the frequency in a certain way, and all of a sudden a shape comes out of those grains of salt. Have you ever seen that?
Cymatics.
I thought it was cymatics. Cymatics, where they're playing with shapes. You guys online, look it up, will you? Cymatics, and I'm going to show. So let me turn up the volume here. And all of a sudden a shape comes out of those grains of salt. Have you ever seen that? So they're putting salt here, and then they're changing the frequencies, and they're starting to organize based on the frequency. Can you guys see that? That's essentially how it works when you vibrate at a certain frequency, and then you are drawn and to organize with individuals who are vibrating at the same frequency. But when it comes to soul clusters, these are souls that have been born around the same time. The soul that's been born around the same time, which is eons old before you ever make a body. You are eons old as a soul. It takes a long time for your soul to figure out how to make a body with a sperm and an egg. If you've ever watched video of sperm, a whole bunch of sperm moving around, and then looked at individuals, some of them look like they can't get anything done. They just kind of go in a circle, right? And then there'll be a whole bunch of them that do make it to the egg, but only one gets in. These are all souls fighting to make a body, trying to figure out how to make a body. So you might finally figure out how to make a body, but then you're accidentally aborted in the process because you didn't quite get all the parts moving. So you become a birth that didn't happen, and then you try again, or any number of things. You may not have been able to thrive for very long or live very long in a body. So you have got a lot to have to learn before you suddenly become conscious.
Aren't these people, I don't know if this is on or not,
Just hold it close to your mouth.
within your cluster, are these people that you have had other lifetimes with and perhaps owe karma to or want to repay karma to or help in some way and learn from them?
Yes and no. I mean, there's how do we describe this without spending a whole hour on souls? Whenever an individual has a purpose that requires the involvement of members of their soul group, there's a coordinating board that literally sets everyone down and says, at this age you'll be doing this, at this age you'll be doing that, and then by this time you'll be doing that. These are coordinating the process of an individual's life who has a very strong purpose. And the others in that cluster, their sole purpose may be just to help that one with a great purpose. And they may not be here for very long, just long enough to affect that person's purpose. So they may reincarnate in another cycle for their own purpose. So by the time you coordinate all these lifetimes with various individuals in your soul cluster, that's a lot of miscoordination where you don't even wind up in the same vicinity at the same time. Does that make sense?
Because then you're no longer part of a cluster if you're not together.
People online can't hear you talking, so just use your microphone, please.
If you're not together or working or learning or growing, then you're not even a cluster. And
you were born at the same time as souls that make you a cluster.
Yeah, okay.
And then that cluster of souls has been eons old before ever making a body.
The same cluster.
Right. You're born around the same time. And so every incarnation, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of incarnations. So those cycles start getting mismatched. Okay. You're welcome. Yes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So here we've been talking a lot about God, spirituality, and I'm wondering, most of the world is left brain. They're relying on science and technology for most of the operation, and probably much to the detriment of the earth and the world. So how do you should you just abandon science and technology and start manifesting from a spiritual point, or do you try to blend these? Is there a place to use science and technology and then blend it with your spirituality, or this God, whatever, however you want? I'm not sure exactly how to put it, but it seems like most of the world is very left brain. You have business, it's the bottom line. They don't seem to care what they're doing to the earth as long as they make their money. So how would a person operate in the world and still bring in what we're talking about here? This evolution?
Responsibility.
Yeah, yes.
So the way of thinking about the world as being left brain isn't particularly accurate. We would say that most people are concerned with survival. And in the way that they are concerned with their survival, they don't care about anyone else's or anything else's survival. And that entity could be the survival of a company, the survival of a job, the survival of a lifestyle, the survival of everything they own. So where their head is in their stuff. And in this stuff that they have their head in, they are concerned with its accumulation based on value. The value that they think they have in the world is identified by their accumulation of stuff. So how do you have a world where the focus isn't on stuff but instead on spirit, when the world is run by the condition of stuff? How do you have a world of spirit when you live in a world of people concerned only with stuff? You cannot be of the world and be spiritually focused at the same time. You can understand the parameters of your job, do your job, so that you can keep a roof over your head, shoes on your feet, and food on the table. And in those particulars of your job, you hope there isn't some contribution you're making to the destruction of the world. But ultimately, the job's only purpose is to satisfy your basic needs. Put a little money behind, a little money back, so that you can survive after the end of the job. Science and technology are very important to the future of spirit, because ultimately we believe that the more science is able to prove about the existence of things it cannot see, the greater our chance to influence that which cannot be seen, that which has no right or wrong way, particularly. But our effect in the world and on individuals depends on believability. And believability comes from awesomeness. When something is awesome, science has demonstrated the awe of it. So science is very important to us to show people what God is. How to be in the world but not of the world is to focus only on your own spiritual truth teller, your own spiritual truth teller, and to master that truth teller. Not because you want to tell people what to do, but because you want to help those who don't know what to do. Keep your mind on the intimate connection and condition instead of the ultimate, meaning this great big world outside of you can do nothing about. Separate from that. Come to this closer state in you that allows you to be there for those who need you, to show God through you, and serve in that. But there's no way to listen to the world and listen to God at the same time. Except in, God, how do you want me to be in the world? So that I can serve you as you serve others through me. So Joe Heller asks about the Nag Hammadi texts and the Dead Sea Scrolls, which, if you guys have never read the Nag Hammadi texts, they are fascinating collection. Recently, they originally written in Coptic, which is Egyptian. So God says the insight on the Nag Hammadi texts, why they were hidden. So there was a time in human history when God was not to be discussed openly, or you could be killed, thrown into the lion's den. You think it's hard to worship in the way that you know to worship and be spiritual in this world. Well, it was a much harder time back then because they were murdered, crucified, destroyed for believing in a single God, one God. Monotheism came out of a world of polytheism. So the reason they were buried was to preserve the life of the individuals who were scribing in communion. And the next part of the question was, why were they hidden and what is their importance? Well, their importance is for the ongoing story of God and the ongoing communion with God in those stories. I was kind of hoping people would ask some questions just because I haven't been in the news, listening to the news. And there seems to be a lot of impassioned dialogue on Facebook about things. I was kind of hoping to get some insight on some of this stuff too.
Well, I'm just curious about the stock market and the whole structure.
I'm just curious about the stock market and the whole structure of what might be happening with the whole government and everything.
The volatility of the stock market is as it always was. It's a purely psychosocial phenomenon. So as it heats up, people are throwing money in ways that they think growth is going to occur. And they see growth occurring and they want to be part of that growth, so they run after it and they throw their money at it and hoping that they'll get money back from what they saw as growth. And they're creating an artificial growth as a result of that. And it's called a bubble. So the condition of a bubble is starting to heat up. The real question is, how long will that bubble last? And when it bursts, who will be affected? That's the real question. And we think that the way that the bubble bursts is when someone notices that the thing that's heating it up is vacuous. It has no substance. So what's going on right now that seems to have no substance? You asked the question? What seems to be going on right now that has no substance? Here's the microphone.
It seems like even the real estate is and all the things that was starting to happen in 2008 are happening again. It seems like, and people are buying, and the interest rates keep going up and down, and I think they're going back down again. And so it just seems like it's repeating what.
And it will over and over and over and over and over. The way to identify how to benefit from this is to recognize the system. And the system, you can look back 30 years and start to see a system that's cycling. So what investment have you made that you're worried about? Give us an idea of that.
Just the stock market. But I mean, yeah.
But you've invested something somewhere that would be your concern.
Right. And my parents just recently died, and there's some money in that, and so I don't have no idea what it's in, but my brother's taking care of it. So it's just like, he's not doing anything with it, and I have a feeling if he doesn't, I don't know. That's why pretty soon I'm just worried because it's in there and it's going to all go down with him, because he doesn't have the best energy about money and stuff.
So the problem for you is the fear that it's not properly managed, and if it's not properly managed, you'll lose it all. And we agree this is a problem. And if you just leave it over to him to handle without researching the best way to handle it and getting some kind of consultant involved, you could lose. We think this is so not just for you, but for all of you to be very careful with your investments, because the volatility could affect you. And in that way, we think moving over to less financially volatile programs is a good idea. Really.
You mean like purchasing gold instead of stock?
Or bonds or something? Or mutual funds?
It's still stock market.
But some are low risk. Some are with companies that have been around forever and are always going to be there. This question is, how high is it going to get and how low is it going to drop? I have a question here. Did we create our path in spirit? No, sorry, that was a repeat. Some humans hold on to more dark, lower density energy than they do light. higher density energy, light, higher density energy. Oh, I see where she's going. Let's see. In co-creating as humans, does one energy have more influence over the other? Oh, did we already go through this one? Yeah, we did. Did go that one. Sorry. I have a question for everybody. This might be a riddle, I don't know, but this is a question God wants me to ask you. What is the worst way to describe your experience? The worst way. What is the worst way to describe your experience? Experience in general, or this experience? Experience in general. When you're describing your experience, what is the worst way to describe your experience?
By being negative, by showing how bad it is. And I don't know. Thank you. How bad the experience is affecting you and yours, and how miserable you are.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted here because the picture on here is showing the camera moving everywhere, but the camera's not moving. So, sorry, I got distracted. Maybe that's, I'm just seeing, never mind. I'm sorry. Okay, negative. Your answer was the worst way to describe your experience is negatively. God says, what's someone else's answer?
Nobody wants to answer.
Like negative in how general?
I'm sorry, guys. I just realized that something is going on with our live stream. It's really warm in here. I think that's why everybody's sleepy. Can we turn the air on a little bit higher? Or? Let's see. Good grief. Time ran out? How did that happen? Sorry, guys. We may have to. Oh. Is it because our time ran out? That doesn't sound right. Oh, is this me live? I lost everybody's questions. Here it comes. Are we back? We're back. We're back. We're back. Did I deposit enough quarters? That's funny. It's funny. Okay, Susan says, it happened right after I asked the question about North Korea. Yeah, that's the kind of question I was looking for. Ask that one again. North Korea. Okay, the question God was asking is, what's the worst way to describe experience? And one of them was, the answer was negatively, and the other one was, what was the answer someone gave? That was the only guess? The worst way to describe experience. So God says the worst way to describe experience is it happened to someone else and it's going to happen to you now. So it happened to someone else and it's going to happen to you now. You mean the way you're describing it? So when somebody uses the word you instead of I, right. You know how, I was about ready to do it. You know how when you're describing your experience and you use the word you. You know when you're driving in your car and the traffic is really bad and you get all stressed out? Rather than when I drive my car and the traffic is really bad, I get stressed out. So God says the worst way to describe experience is to use the word you instead of I. So from now on, practice using I when you describe your experience. Okay, the next question, this may be a series of questions. God says the next question we have for you is, what is the worst way to describe something you enjoy? The worst way to describe something you enjoy.
Using the word I?
No.
Making a past tense.
Just using the word I, making it past tense. Yes, making it past tense. So how do you make it past tense? Bring her the microphone before I have to tell her to use the microphone. How do you describe something you enjoy in the past tense? What does that mean?
By just describing the incident or the happening without expressing the effect that it is still having on you. And if it's a good experience, it should still have a good, a good result or a good feeling about it.
That's fascinating. God says, we completely agree. We completely agree. When you are experiencing an experience from something that happened you enjoyed, you are in the present, experiencing it. So describe it in the present, and you'll experience what you enjoy all over again. Okay, last question we have for you. How would you define the common man? How would you define the common man? What makes a common man? Or the common man? Watches TV all the time is a definition of the common man. TV or sports? No, not even close, really. How do you describe the common man? I think you're the only one awake, actually. Okay.
I would describe the common man, if I wanted to do it nicely. I would say he's the kind of person that fulfills responsibility and is enjoyable to be with and enjoys life.
Okay. Would you guys agree with that? The common man? So we're talking about the common man as an entity, in a sense. It's an entity. The common man is an entity made up of individuals with a common system. It's an entity of individuals in a common system.
Maybe they have the same belief that the world and experience happen to them instead of creating it from the inside out.
In a way, yes, because they are affected by the world outside of them in a common way. The common man has to get a job, feed their family. They have certain ways about them that make them a contributor socially in some way. So in this contribution socially, they are identified as part of the group dynamic, the common man. So if a leader comes along and claims to have what the common man's needs are met, claims to have met these needs, what are those needs that this leader claims they can meet for the common man?
Well, that's accepting the responsibility that he would have to provide an income or a source of wealth that would provide, food and clothing and comfort, physical, human comfort. That would be the major thing, plus happiness, entertainment, I would say.
So the leader has claimed that I'm going to be able to give you all a job. Everyone I can give jobs to. And the needs of the common man are based on their job.
No? Okay.
Usually the common man is all about survival and security.
Right, right. The common man is all about security and survival. And if a leader can come along and promise security and survival, that's who the common man votes for.
And it feels like the common man wants to feel good about who he is and what he's doing. And it feels like that's the message that's coming from Washington to certain people, like who you are and what you're doing is good, and other people are not so good, but it feels like he does address the common man in affirming somehow something that doesn't get affirmed very often. Maybe by the outside world. Well, more than jobs, it's a belief system and a value system that doesn't get addressed. And so it's like a hole in the common. It feels like a hole that doesn't get ever addressed. And I wonder if that hole is somehow getting, I don't know, filled up that some way.
I just saw someone else's answer here. Freedom is what the teacher should provide. I was drawn to that word because I feel like there's also a certain freedom that the common man needs. Is that right?
Yeah.
But it says, well, they not only need it, they are insisting that this freedom be the condition of their living, that they have to earn a living in a free way. They can't earn a living in some enslaved way or some communist way where everybody pools all their money into the state and then the state redistributes it so that everyone gets a part of it. That would not be a free way for the common man.
What about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Doesn't that cover it?
The common man?
Yeah.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. No.
It's not?
No, in fact, it's a very inadequate way of describing the needs of the common man. Because if you are given from your country life, that's not a free country. If it's given to you from your country, life is given and taken from your country. Free to pursue, well, who says you that I wouldn't be otherwise free? Only a government that is insisting they are the product of the common man and therefore can bring to the common man his freedom or deny it. But that's impossible. If you really think about where your freedom comes from, there is no governing body that would dictate that. So in many ways, there's no such thing as a common man or as the common man. And the reason there is no such thing is because the system wherein the common man is being defined is a system that doesn't exist either. There is no security anywhere.
But you said if it was provided, if somebody declared.
Wait.
Oh, if somebody declared that they could provide it, would it be used, or would it then relate to the common man?
No, it's just a lie.
What's a lie? That it could be provided?
Right.
Oh, gotcha.
Or that someone else could give it to you or take it away. Right. So if that is the condition right now wherein people who voted for Donald Trump are pleased with themselves for having him as a president, and you know, as we've described, that's a full illusion. How do you deal with your friends who are among the so-called common man? How do you deal with them, interact with them, knowing that they are silently? Okay. Well, no, what you're saying is that I don't get into a fight with them. So you disavow them. Right?
No.
Hang on, somebody has the microphone.
In collaboration, find out what's common among us.
Right. What's common among us? And there really is only one thing that is common among you. What is it?
Our hearts?
Survival.
Well, no. Survival.
Spirit, source, God.
God is the only thing common among you. That's what you have in common. All else is unique to individual experience. So the only thing you could bring to your friends who are counter to your perspective is God as you being God. So what is God as you being God? What is God as you? It's one word and it's very simple.
Love.
Hmm?
Authenticity?
No. Authenticity, unity, understanding. I'm just saying that on their behalf so they'll know what you guys were saying. Mm-mm. So the word is listening. If you bring this common way of you to them, that you have in common with them, that is God, to be God in their presence, you're listening. To find what they need. And you're not going to be able to change their mood, because their mood is about what they think is justice, what they think is theirs. And in this thing that they think is theirs, everyone else is going to take it away if they don't believe what they believe. They think they'll lose theirs. So the only way to keep people focused on what you have in common, and in the course of that serve what you have in common, you have to listen. And the way that you listen is by asking them why they believe what they believe. Not in judgment, but because you want to know what's wrong. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? And these are intimate relationships. These are moments that you have with people. These are not with the common man, because you can't have a relationship with the common man, because we've introduced how it's an impossible thing. There is no such thing as the common man. There is no governing body that can give you a job, security, a future. The only one capable of giving that to you is you. And how good it is depends on you. How good you are at it depends on you. How often you tune in to get the most of everything and everyone that you are involved with is to find that common space within you that is God and become it. You are someone who has a God self. Your God self is the higher self, but it is really yourself, the greater way of you, the most of you, and the highest of you. So keeping everything that sounds like a belief out of your conversations, and bring to your conversation curiosity and listening. You'll find out how you can serve God in the course of that. It'll be about how you serve them. Now, the last thing we want to describe has to do with out of bounds. What is out of bounds? So, would someone describe the condition of bounds? What's bounds? If we say out of bounds, what's bounds?
Boundaries, like setting
limits,
boundaries that you don't cross.
Limits, boundaries. No.
I think bounds are what's within maybe the circle, and out of bounds is not only what's out it, but it's not tied down.
Right. Out of bounds is not tied. So bounds is the bound, the bounding. It is holding it. It's not the boundaries, although what's bound is held within boundary. Out of bounds means no bounding. It's free. Out of bounds is free. Well, no. Limits are ways of making a way. So if this is the way, your limit is width. You can't go any wider than this. But there's still forward and back and up and down. These restrictions that are limits are form. They can form the way. So freedom in this way then means who am I within this way? God, I don't know what you're talking about here, so I don't even know if I'm gesturing right. Well, the human body is a bound to the soul. It binds the soul to 3 dimensions, and it holds the soul still within these 3 dimensions. But without the body, the soul can go left, right, up, down, in, out in a moment, in a thought. It flies. The soul flies. It doesn't have to walk. It flies. So how, within these bounds, is there freedom?
choosing to stay bound.
No, because that would be like saying choosing to live or die. And not that there isn't some kind of freedom in that choice to live or die. In the grand scheme of things, in the reality of things, is you never really die. So you're choosing to off yourself because there's something about where you are and the time that you are there that's disappointing, and to end that disappointment, and you want to start over. The freedom to do that is a choice, but that's not what we mean by freedom. The boundaries that your soul, or the bounds in which your soul is experiencing a body and still has freedom, means that you are boundless within this body. So what makes you boundless within a body? Consciousness. Consciousness that seeks itself is a mind that considers itself. It considers what it is. As a mind considers what it is, what is it? By Jim. As a mind that considers itself. What is it considering?
Would it be considering who I am or who we are?
How to reflect God.
No, it's not how to reflect God or asking itself what it is, who I am. It's a mind that is considering itself. What is it considering of itself?
Right action.
Eric says a mind that considers itself is self-aware. That's true. It is aware of a self it is considering. It's divine nature. Sorry, that's really distracting. Can you guys, if you're going to talk, can you go outside? Appreciate that. It's hard to stay in character. So this is a really important question that we want you guys to go to bed with. A mind that is considering itself is listening to itself. It wants to know what it's thinking, and it's listening to its own thoughts. And in the course of its listening to its own thoughts, it's escaping its thoughts. It's going out of bounds. The bounds of thought. And in the bound of thought, so long as you are listening to what you are thinking, and you are identifying the act of that thinking, the thinking isn't defining you, because you are listening. The you are that is listening.
And that's what we just said about talking to other people, was doing the listening. And so this would be listening to ourselves, with not the thoughts, not the reasons, but the actual heart listening. Looking at it from that perspective makes it easier to talk to other people that are Trump supporters. It's like, I mean, really. Well, okay. That's good.
So we asked, what is a mind considering itself? What is a mind considering itself? It's listening. It's listening to itself. It's considering itself. And it is free as a result of what it's listening. Because the thoughts bind the mind, and they bind the mind to the body. So when you release the mind from the body and allow it what it is instead of a body, you listen to the thoughts that define it as a body and say, that's not me. That's not who I am. My experience is greater. And that is our parting lesson today. And we've gone over, but this is really one of the most important lessons for anyone to learn, is what is a mind considering itself. And it's with that act that you consider others. Freeing your mind first to help them free theirs is the same activity and compassion you have for you. Okay? Thank you all for joining me. Thank you for staying awake. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody online. Thanks for joining us. Yay.